Welcome to the demonstration of DataFinz, a no-code data integration platform designed to streamline the process that connects data through REST APIs, ingests any format, and automates any integration anywhere across various systems through simple configurations. Data access as an API enables secure, controlled, and efficient data sharing across systems, supporting automation, real-time interactions, and third-party integrations. DataFinz offers a powerful no-code API builder that enables users to create APIs from various data sources within seconds. It supports both OAuth 2.0 and basic authentication for secure access control, ensuring data protection. With serverless API deployment, users can seamlessly launch APIs without managing infrastructure. The platform also includes built-in rate limiting, allowing administrators to restrict the number of reads per user within a specified time frame. Additionally, DataFinz automates the generation of Swagger documentation, simplifying API management and integration for developers and users. DataFinz is built on three simple components that streamline data integration and API management. Connections enable integration with various data sources, including databases, files, and external APIs, ensuring smooth data flow. API Designer endpoints provide a no-code interface for creating and customizing APIs, allowing users to define endpoints, transformations, and security settings effortlessly. From various data sources, API Publisher has the ability to build APIs on top of tables, views, custom SQL, and stored procedures. APIs can also be built on top of different file formats, providing flexibility in data integration. API documentation can also be built for applications, making it easier for developers to understand, test, and integrate APIs. DataFinz provides seamless data access through APIs by integrating with various database connections, data lakes, and file storage systems. The slide displays a sample of supported databases, object types, and storage options, showcasing the platform's flexibility in handling diverse data sources. DataFinz transforms data integration with seamless, no-code access to databases and data lakes through APIs. Its intuitive interface allows users to build APIs effortlessly, automating integrations across environments without any coding. This demo highlights DataFinz connections to PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and Snowflake, showcasing API-driven access to various data sources. We also explore integrations with Azure Data Lake Storage, Amazon S3, and Google Drive, enabling API-based access to different file formats with ease. Users can simply log into DataFinz and create the connections in the configuration panel. Let's take a look at the PostgreSQL connection. A built-in hint section provides detailed guidance on what information needs to be entered, simplifying the setup process. Let's take a quick look at SQL Server and Snowflake database connections as well. Finally, we provide a glimpse into how Azure Data Lake Storage, Amazon S3, and Google Drive integrations can be effortlessly configured for API-based data access. DataFinz empowers users with a no-code approach, making data integration faster, easier, and more efficient than ever before. Exposing tables as APIs using the GET method enables industries to retrieve real-time data for banking transactions, student performance, healthcare records, logistics tracking, and more, ensuring efficient data access and integration. DataFinz enables seamless no-code data retrieval by exposing tables as APIs supporting the GET method. This allows users to efficiently fetch records through API requests, ensuring quick, secure, and structured data access, all without writing a single line of code. In this demo, we'll walk through querying a table using GET with DataFinz. To begin, the user navigates to the API Publisher, selects the Designer option, chooses the relevant API name, object connection, and object name, and then creates a new endpoint, assigning it a meaningful name. After that, they select GET from the available API options. Next, the user chooses the required columns, and DataFinz suggests camel case field names for better readability. Filters can also be applied as needed. Once the endpoint is created, it's ready for validation. The next step is to add the endpoint to the API documentation and set up authentication for secure API access. The user navigates to the API Publisher, selects the documentation option, and provides the application name, authentication type, module name, and optional IP address before selecting the appropriate endpoint. Finally, the user can view API details in Swagger by clicking Authorize, entering credentials and logging in. Upon execution, the user gains direct access to the table data, demonstrating just how simple and powerful DataFinz no-code API integration can be. Exposing tables as APIs using the insert method allows industries to capture and store real-time data, from transaction logging and booking services to claim submissions and healthcare updates, enabling efficient and automated data management. DataFinz allows users to seamlessly expose database tables as APIs, enabling efficient data insertion using the POST method without the need for complex coding. In this demo, we'll walk through inserting a record into a Snowflake table using DataFinz. The user can navigate to the API publisher, select the designer option, choose the relevant API name, object connection, and object name, and then create a new endpoint, assigning it a meaningful name. After that, the user can select POST from the available API options. Next, the user can choose the required field names. DataFinz suggests camel case field names for better readability. Filters can also be applied as needed. Once the endpoint is created, it's ready for validation. The created endpoint is then added to the API documentation, ensuring visibility and accessibility. The next step is setting up authentication to secure API access. A sample JSON payload is provided for reference. Finally, when the API request is executed in Postman, the user can see that the newly inserted records are now present in the Snowflake table, completing the data insertion process. Exposing tables as APIs using the update method allows industries to modify existing records, whether it's updating account details, reservations, shipment tracking, or medical records, ensuring data remains accurate and up-to-date across systems. DataFinz enables updates to database records by exposing tables as APIs, supporting put or patch methods. This allows users to modify existing data efficiently through API requests, ensuring smooth and secure data integration without any coding. In this demo, let's walk through updating a record in Snowflake using DataFinz. The display shows a specific record in Snowflake that needs to be modified. To begin, the user can navigate to the API publisher, select the API name, choose the relevant object connection and object name, and then add a new endpoint, selecting patch from the available API options. Next, the user can select the fields that need to be updated, add filters and API parameters. Once done, the created endpoint is added to the API documentation. The next step is setting up authentication to ensure secure API access. Now, by navigating to the record overview within the DataFinz interface and executing the sample payload in Postman, the user can see the updated record reflected in Snowflake in real time. Exposing tables as APIs using the delete method allows industries to efficiently manage data removal, whether it's canceling reservations, deleting outdated records, removing fraudulent claims, or expiring listings, ensuring data accuracy. DataFinz allows users to securely delete records by exposing tables as APIs, supporting the delete method. This enables efficient data removal through API requests while maintaining controlled and secure access. This demo shows how a record is deleted in Snowflake using DataFinz. To begin, the user navigates to the API publisher, selects the designer option, chooses the API name, object connection, and object name, and creates a new endpoint, selecting delete from the available API options. Next, the user selects the fields, filters, and API parameters for endpoint creation. Once completed, the endpoint is added to the API documentation, and authentication is set up to ensure secure API access. The display shows the sample record that has to be deleted. Finally, upon executing the delete request in Postman, the record is successfully deleted from the Snowflake table, demonstrating how DataFinz simplifies secure and efficient data management. Exposing tables as APIs using joins enables industries to consolidate data from multiple sources into a unified view. Whether it's merging customer transactions in finance, patient records in healthcare, or shipment tracking in logistics, this approach ensures comprehensive and connected data access for enhanced decision-making and analytics. DataFinz enables users to expose SQL queries as APIs using the GET method, allowing efficient data retrieval. This no-code approach simplifies access to query results through API requests, eliminating the need for complex coding or manual database interactions. In this demo, we'll walk through querying a table using GET with DataFinz. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option and the required API name from the list. in that the user can choose the appropriate object connection and object type to create a new endpoint with a meaningful name. Then the user selects Get from the available API options. Next, the required columns are selected in the Fields section. The user can see the camel case field names suggested for better readability. If needed, filters can be applied, and users can define required fields in the API parameter section. Once the endpoint is set up, it is ready for validation. The next step is to add the endpoint to the API documentation. The user navigates to the API publisher, selects the documentation option, and sets up authentication to ensure secure API access. Finally, the data is validated in Swagger and can be tested in Postman. The user executes the API call, authenticates the request, and retrieves data directly from SQL, demonstrating how DataFinz makes SQL integration fast, flexible, and completely no-code. A single API for accessing all database objects enables industries to manage and interact with data effortlessly. Whether it's healthcare, finance, retail, or manufacturing, organizations can query, insert, update, and delete records across multiple tables, ensuring smooth and structured data operations. DataFinz empowers users to access all objects within a database using a single API, eliminating the need to create multiple endpoints for different tables, views, or stored procedures. This no-code approach enhances efficiency by consolidating database interactions into one streamlined API. In this demo, we'll walk through how DataFinz simplifies access to all database objects using a single API. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option, and choosing the API name from the API Publish section, and choosing the relevant connection and data type. Next, an endpoint is created with a meaningful name, and post response is selected if a response is expected from the request. From the Fields option, the user then selects the required fields for which access needs to be granted. The next step is to add filters and the required input parameters to create an endpoint. Once the endpoint is created, the user can update it in the API documentation and set up authentication. The API is then validated in Swagger. Finally, in Postman, authentication is provided to access a specific object type, such as a table. Once the request is executed, the user can see all the columns dynamically displayed. Additionally, an example demonstrates how a select statement is executed, further showcasing DataFinz's ability to streamline database access with a single, efficient API. Exposing stored procedure as an API allows industries to automate transaction updates, inventory management, claim processing, and billing adjustments. This helps maintain accuracy, reliability, and smooth data operations across systems. DataFinz enables users to execute stored procedures as APIs using the POST method, allowing data operation with a no-code approach. This simplifies complex database operations by exposing stored procedures as API endpoints. In this demo, we'll walk through executing a stored procedure via API to update data using DataFinz. We have an example stored procedure that transfers an amount from one account to another. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option, API name, and choosing the relevant object connection and object type. Next, the user can create a new endpoint, give it a meaningful name, and select Post as the API method from the available options. The user then selects the required field names, filters, and the required input parameters to create an endpoint. Once the setup is complete, the endpoint is added to API documentation and authentication is configured for secure access. Finally, the API is validated and executed in Swagger. The stored procedure is then tested in Postman, where authorization is provided by specifying the source and destination account IDs for the transfer. Once executed, the user can confirm the successful transfer of the specified amount. Exposing CSV files as APIs using the GET method allows industries to share structured data like financial reports, vehicle history, and shipment tracking, enabling easy access for analysis and integration. DataFinz enables users to expose CSV files as APIs using the GET method, providing no-code access to file-based data. This simplifies data retrieval by allowing structured file content to be accessed through API requests. In this demo, we'll walk through how DataFinz seamlessly connects to Google Drive, selects a CSV file, and exposes it as a REST API in just a few clicks. The user navigates to the API publisher, selects the designer option, the API name to be configured, choosing the Google Drive connection where the CSV file is stored along with the relevant data type. Next, a meaningful name is assigned and GET is selected as the API method. Then the user configures the fields, filters, and input parameters to create an endpoint. Once the endpoint is created, it is added to API documentation and authentication is configured for secure access. The API is then validated in Swagger, where users can test the request and preview the data. Finally, in Postman, the API request is executed, returning the CSV data as JSON, demonstrating how DataFinz effortlessly transforms file-based data into accessible APIs. Exposing Excel files as APIs using the GET method enables industries to share critical data like energy usage, sales reports, and research insights, making real-time access and analysis more convenient. DataFinz allows users to seamlessly expose Excel files as APIs using the GET method, providing no-code access and simplifying data retrieval. This eliminates complex configurations, enabling API-based access to Excel content with ease. In this demo, we'll walk through how DataFinz connects to cloud storage, selects an Excel file, and instantly exposes it as a REST API. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option, and choosing the API name to edit. They then enter the relevant object connection, type, and object name before creating a new endpoint with a meaningful name. Once done, they select Get from the available API options. Next, the user selects the required columns in the Fields section, while DataFinz automatically suggests camel case field names for better readability. Filters can also be applied as needed. Finally, the user can choose the necessary API parameters. Once the endpoint is created, it's ready for validation. The final step is to navigate to the API publisher, select the documentation option, add the endpoint to API documentation, and set up authentication for secure access. The API is then tested in Postman, where upon execution, the user can instantly retrieve data from the Excel file. Exposing Parquet files as APIs using the GET method allows industries to process and analyze large datasets efficiently, from financial transactions and smart grid analytics to IoT sensor data and healthcare research. DataFinz enables no-code access to Parquet files stored in Amazon S3 by exposing them as APIs using the GET method. This allows structured, columnar data to be retrieved effortlessly through API requests with minimal configuration. In this demo, we'll walk through how DataFinz connects to Amazon S3, selects a Parquet file, and exposes it as a REST API. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option, choosing the API name to edit, and enter the relevant object connection, object type, and object name before creating a new endpoint. After assigning a meaningful name, they select Get from the available API options. Next, the user selects the required columns in the Fields section. Filters and API parameters can be applied as needed. Once the endpoint is created, it's ready for validation. Finally, the user navigates to the API publisher, selects the documentation option, and adds the endpoint to API documentation, configuring the authentication for secure access. The API is then tested in Postman, where a request is executed to instantly retrieve structured data from the Parquet file stored in Amazon S3. Exposing PDF file contents as APIs using the GET method enables industries to extract and process essential documents like medical records, invoices, contracts, and shipping details, supporting automation and efficient data retrieval. DataFinz allows users to expose PDF file contents stored in Azure Data Lake Storage as APIs using the GET method. This no-code approach makes it easy to extract text from PDF files, enabling retrieval of PDF data. In this demo, we'll walk through how DataFinz connects to Azure Data Lake Storage, selects a PDF file, and exposes its contents as a REST API. The user starts by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option, and configuring the API name, selecting the API connection from the list, and file contents from object type. The endpoints here automatically gets created. After the setup, the endpoint is added to API documentation and authentication is enabled for secure access. Finally, the API is tested in Postman, where a request is executed to retrieve the list of files from the cloud storage. To retrieve the file's contents from a PDF file, The user can simply do so by executing another request mentioning the particular file name in Postman. Exposing Word file contents as APIs using the GET method allows industries to extract key information from contracts, reports, medical records, assignments, and policy documents, enabling automation and structured data retrieval. To retrieve data from a Word document stored in Azure Data Lake Storage as APIs using the GET method, the user can continue by just executing the appropriate Word file name in Postman. This demo showcases how DataFinz simplifies data retrieval, offering a quick, no-code solution for accessing structured data via APIs. A single API for accessing all file types enables industries to efficiently process reports, contracts, compliance documents, and operational data across finance, healthcare, logistics, and more, ensuring structured and automated data retrieval. DataFinz provides no-code access to multiple files stored in Google Drive using a single API with the GET method. This approach simplifies file retrieval by consolidating access to various file formats through one unified API request, eliminating the need for multiple endpoints. In this demo, we'll showcase how DataFinz connects to Google Drive, retrieves all files from a specified directory, and exposes them as a single REST API. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting the designer option, and configuring the relevant API name, connection, and object type. The endpoint here automatically gets created. Once configured, the endpoint is added to API documentation, and authentication is set up for secure access. Finally, the API is validated in Postman, where the user executes a request with the appropriate file name, retrieving a structured list of files from Google Drive in real time. A single API for consuming diverse data formats and parsing them into databases enables industries to handle dynamic JSON/XML inputs from various sources, ensuring structured ingestion for e-commerce, finance, healthcare, logistics, and more. DataFinz simplifies data ingestion by allowing users to process and store JSON and XML data through a single endpoint. With its no-code approach, it effortlessly handles semi-structured data, transforming it into database tables without complex configurations. In this demo, we'll explore how DataFinz streamlines data integration and parsing through a single API. The user begins by navigating to API Publisher, selecting the designer option, and choosing the API name, appropriate object connection, and object type. Here, the endpoint is automatically created, eliminating manual configuration. Next, the endpoint is added to API documentation, and authentication is set up to ensure secure data access. Several parameters can be configured in this process. By reviewing the example values, users can identify locations where API data can be parsed or specify a connection name from DataFinz. Additionally, users can leverage other functionalities, such as adding new fields or setting up alerts for enhanced data management. Let's explore how to dynamically create a table in SQL Server while parsing JSON in Postman. Here, we have a sample JSON data containing nested arrays. When the user executes the request in Postman, a corresponding JSON table is automatically created in SQL Server. Similarly, by simply changing the file format and executing the request, an XML table is created. The newly created tables can then be viewed directly in SQL Server. A single API for consuming diverse data formats and parsing them into databases helps industries manage dynamic JSON/XML inputs efficiently across e-commerce, finance, healthcare, logistics, and more. DataFinz empowers users to ingest and parse multiple data structures into files stored in Google Drive, all through a single API. With its no-code approach, DataFinz simplifies the process of parsing semi-structured data, including JSON, XML, and storing it in Google Drive. In this demo, we'll explore how DataFinz streamlines data ingestion and parses it into files using a single API. The user begins by navigating to API Publisher, selecting the designer option, and configuring the Google Drive connection. Here, the endpoint is automatically created, allowing users to process data effortlessly. Once the setup is complete, the endpoint is added to API documentation, and authentication is set up to ensure secure access. The user can parse the JSON data into a file in Google Drive by executing the request in Postman. Similarly, to parse XML data into a file in Google Drive, the user can simply change the file format and execute the request. The newly created files can then be viewed directly in Google Drive. A single API for combining multiple data sources and building structured APIs enables industries like aerospace, finance, healthcare, telecom, real estate, automotive, and more. DataFinz empowers users to combine multiple data sources into a single, unified API, simplifying data integration across different platforms. With its no-code approach, DataFinz combines various databases, file storage, and data lake for efficient querying and analysis. In this demo, we'll see how DataFinz integrates products data from PostgreSQL, orders data from Snowflake, and customer data from a Parquet file in Azure Data Lake Storage, all within a single API. The user begins by navigating to the API publisher, selecting Designer option in the DataFinz interface, and configuring the API by specifying the name, object connection, and object type. In the next step, the user creates an endpoint by selecting Get from the available API options. Multiple sources can be added by clicking Add Source and configuring the object connections. Users can then specify objects, delimiters, aliases, and joins using a simple drop-down selection. The user can format the connection by clicking Share under each source and modify the object, field, condition, and connection as needed. Finally, the necessary field names, filters, and API parameters are defined to create the endpoint. Once created, the endpoint is added to API documentation, and authentication is set up for secure access. The API is then tested in Postman, where a single request retrieves combined data from all three sources. The user can now query products, orders, and customer details all through a single API with DataFinz.